Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the stream Sunday morning. Look good. Okay. It's been a little while. In recovering. I still have a bit of my jaw. Sleep has still been a bit so, but I'm recovering. And next week, streaming all three. Um, Get my what I've got going on this week. Yeah. Monday and Thursday, not of this week, following week, traveling. But this week, I think we're good. So, what are we doing today? Just before the stream, created a bunch. So upgraded analog, tendencies upgraded ink. I have not tested it. The moment of truth. Daughter just came and closed the door. Apparently, I bother them. Okay. All right. So our app up and going. This is still random stuff here. Are all articles gives us both articles? However, there are a couple of things that I want to take a look at. For example, we can see here that these are formatted. They should be formatted as Markdown. The Markdown here in text. It would be nice if we could format it as Markdown. The other thing is, like, if I click on this, we're getting random data and we get different photos. It might be nice to use the same photo across. And I have an idea for basically hashing um, the article itself to generate a key. If that will work, that would be fun. And then, of course, the home page. We also don't. So it would be nice to get a main article. Um, that's what we're looking at this morning. Is first of all, I'd like to figure out the markdown stuff. Markdown in our blurbs. Yeah, we'll see if we can do that. If we can't, then we might modify contentful to give us a blurb. instead of using the article as a blurb. We'll see about that. Let's get started. I haven't used Aqua. A lot of stuff. Yeah, Brains Toolbox. Brains created a lot of tools. Um, right. Interesting. Copilot gave us an access denied error when we tried to upgrade. Try one more time. If that doesn't work, then Copilot is giving start again. So it downloaded stuff into this directory, but it says I can't act. That's strange. I'll worry about that later. Go ahead, open it. Take a look at that later. There were a couple of things that I noticed this morning when I was taking a look around that I want to get fixed. First of all, the get articles says that it can be an async function. That's fine. We never reassign res. That's it. Yeah, I was reassigned for it. Now I don't. Um, One thing I want to do also is this type up. This author type of entry skeleton. Um, it looks like do instead is instead of trying to do an entry skeleton type, um, we can just say that it has that place, that goes there, go. And that should fix up our issue down here, right? I think that I need a content type ID. Here we've got our field. We've got author fields, first name, screen, and a content type ID, author. Down here, author type number. This is the weird thing to me. Um, so get entries returns this type here that will turn into our own type. Um, but for whatever reason, these values, I don't know why it's doing that. Collection. So we told it to get entries. And the type we told it to get entries for our article. If I were to turn this into an array here, then we get problems. Now we're missing article model. We look here, results is an entry collection. I want to look at why entry collection could possibly. Why the type could possibly be never. That's that's where I think this. So and with our content service, we get content type. The content types allow us to get space. Recognizes either all content Interesting. That's a cool call. Tag tags get entry. So parses a raw JSON data into entry. Must be the query, right? Data item. Dynamic key. But so entry. And an entry. That's what I got here. Look at collection. Collection has errors. So results got item array of entry value. Doesn't seem right. That might be the problem. This L. Oh, yes. But this entry collection, seeing the I. So there's intent. Okay. Collection total skip limit items. Entry is base entry has sys with type. Entry and it's got fields on it. Putting the field name there. So this is where modify files. So this is the chain modifier. field name in should exist. Oh, we don't have locales on all locales. So if we hit that, resolved filter, resolved field, resolved link. Take a look at the document. I would like to get this figured out. Why these are all of type never? They shouldn't be. And we learned before that making something type never actually basically allows it to be anything. Right? Link field, their entry asset. So this is all the querying stuff here, but it doesn't have any of the TypeScript. So they wrote it in TypeScript. Where it walks you through strict mode. Have it in strict mode. Right from the old to the new. That's yeah. There. Oh, I think this is the problem here. I'm trying to use TypeScript values, and I should be using values. So they're saying that we should generate these types automatically. how we would do that. Generating type. There are several OSS projects out there. Prefer a GUI. Yeah, I don't care about a GUI. So it looks like I can run this just from inside of content. So take a look at a couple of these libraries and see which library winds up was updated 3 weeks ago. Okay, number 4. This one's definitely got more downloads. It's got way more people using it. This one touched in years. Done. Go. So it looks like our winner is this contentful type script code gen. Environment or yes in the root of your project directory. Project export a promise that resolves with your contentful environment. Fire content management. Our access token. Node. Creates an it's an it doesn't create the create it the way it looks. Um, we look items. Or let's just try something. Export type contentful. And take the time to set up. If I was doing it in um, if I was doing it in a production environment or something like that, here we're just going to go use just the contentful entry field types. So if we look at our contentful service, fields, our fields, instead of doing it this way, we're going to spell these out. So we need an ID. And if we look at where are we grabbing the ID? Grabbing it from SIP. We don't need that one. We need title, content, title and content. Publish date, we can grab image height and image. So really we only need title and content. So we just say, hey, title of type. And this is where we can use their stuff. So they're grabbing it from contentful.field type. So we should be able to just say, hey, this is an entry field type. Text. And then the thing that we're grabbing is the content types. Ooh, hey, TBD Gamer. Oh, and I've got, man, I haven't been paying attention to chat. I'm sorry about that. You've been very focused on. Let's see. Catch up on chat. So TBD Gamer says, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for showing up. It's a Phrenic web developer. Hello, don't use content offensive. Yeah, use Scrappy. Angular also adds now by default SSR. Yes, you're absolutely right. And the reason I chose Contentful, we use Contentful at work, and it's free as long as I keep it under like 1 million requests per month. And this is not going to be something that I put out there, right? This is just to show how we could do this. But I will take a look at Strappy. Yes, Angular does not add by default SSR. We're using analog, and analog will provide us with SSR if we want. I haven't set that up. Window.something is not working to build a complete website. Have good VS Code plugin in. Interesting. I would have to see your code. You may have turned on SSR when you set the project up. But I also don't recommend using window.something. So, for example, let's say in this page here, I wanted to use the window, like a window object, and I'm not using it anywhere here, right? Oh, look at that! I am. So I'm already breaking my own rule. Oh, this is the scrolling stuff that we worked on a little while ago. Um, so this is wrong. Um, doing window.request animation frame makes it so that this won't work with it won't work with SSR. I have SSR and SSG turned off right now in my analog project. That's something else we could take a look at. But to make this work with SSR, what we need to do is instead of directly accessing the window object here, we inject it, right? Got a whole bunch of stuff injected into this script, right? Um, so we can also get, we can just say const, and here we can call it, window ref, and then we can just say inject, and Angular includes the window. Do it as they'll give you, because this one's coming from like right here. I'm grabbing the document, but I may have to provide my own provider for it and create my own token, and that would make it work with SSR and SS. Um, Go take a look. So Angular. Let's go to the new website, right? I think even if we go to angular.io, it's going to redirect. No, it doesn't. That will happen, I think, when Angular 18. But go to the docs. If we search for, yes, is lazily so. Haven't used that before. I think window is one of the ones that you need to set up your own injection token for. Environment. Um, let's yeah, it's gonna tell us window is not defined. I'm gonna keep using SS render and still access window. You can use after next. So that's Angular 17. Using change detector. Looks like they're directly accessing the window on platform. Usually what I do, yeah, is create an injection token. Um, and then you can inject that into your providers. You can add it to your providers. But I actually think because we're on Angular 17, I could do after next render. And I should have done that anyway. And so um, since you're building a new project, you're probably on 17 also. And so what you can do, in our scroll, we've got this. So instead of this, we can just say after next render, sort that. And that should work. So it's going to use the request animation frame for us anyway. So it's going to be full. And they've got the render option where we can pass our early read. So I'm not going to worry about those options. But now by using after next render, then my window is guaranteed to be defined. The other thing we could do, um, we could create an injection token. So yeah, I don't have the server set up and stuff like that. TRPC client, I haven't messed with that yet. We'll definitely be doing this in a little bit, maybe. Actually, if I set up, might be worth. It might be worth setting these up for our contentful stuff. So we'll take a look at that in the future, because that would help with the key management and stuff that I was struggling with last time. And then we could just, bootstrap our server, and then we could turn on our SSR and SSG. That's probably worth doing. Um, but in the meantime, what we could do is in the models, we could just add a new file. We could just say that this is our window.token. Yes. Out of here, we can just export window. Injection window, right? And then the next thing we can do, very similar to what we saw here, is I believe they created a provider for it. Yeah. Oh, and they just threw the provider in the injection token, which we can easily do too. We can actually borrow. You do. So um, with our injection token, we've got the window and then the options. Pass in like a factory you want. Um, I typically don't do it this way. Uh, I like to use like to create provider functions. So I would just do export function provide window. And this will return window. It's going to return a provider. So, and we actually don't want this. We can just say, hey, use factory. This is where, actually, we can just copy a lot of what they did there, right? My muscle memory is a little bit off using a Mac at work. Factory. Return a window. So here, if window isn't undefined, I don't want to return a new window. I don't think that will work in SSR, but return that, right? So now, now what we can do is we can go back to our main.ts. Actually, we can just put it in our app config here. So here we can just do provide window and import that. There we go. Now we've got our window provided. So now for our so in our page, now we can just say, hey, our we can just grab a reference to it. So memory killing me. So now we can just say const window ref equals inject. Here we can just grab window, our injection token, and that works. The other thing we could do is, we could do const window ref, and here we could just say document dot. So on the document, we can grab information about the document. Saying default view. Yeah. So, if you inject the document, then you can grab the default view off of it. Now we've got our window ref, and then down here, along with using after next render, we can also say this all. Is there a window in here? Am I imagining things? Oh, I took it out. We don't have it anymore. it was it was when I was listening for request animation for it. So that's we don't need this anymore. But that's a couple of ways we could get it to win. I'm going to take out the extra variables. I'm going to comment them. So we created a token. You know, there are a couple of different ways to create this factory. I like to use this because um, uh, it follows the convention more. You know, you could just straight inject it, but here, if we do provide window, then it's not a root injector too, which may or may not be a big deal to you. There's that page. Oh, this is the output. This is all compiled files. So I'm not using window anywhere else in here. But yeah, JS is the meta framework. Yep, thank you for that, TBD Gamer. He is more of an expert on this one. Yeah. What are the extra things that Analog provides? Let me put a link to Analog for you in the chat. Analog is now in 1.0. So let's grab that. And that is nice that this now works. Hey, Abradores, welcome to the stream, man. So that's the link to Analog.js. So some stuff that Analog.js, it supports vtest and Playwright right out of the box. It's got server and deployment integrations using Nitro. So with Nitro, you can deploy to Netlify and all that stuff. That file-based routing. So if you look, if you go take a look, you'll notice that I don't have. Take a look in my app config, right? So we've got our component input binding and we've got view transitions because we're using that as we move between views. But we're using a file router. So notice in here, I haven't defined any routes anywhere, just all file router. And so what does that mean? That means that it expects this pages to be here. And then anything that's surrounded by parentheses, that's where you'll go first. So home is my default route. And then within home, we've got article containers and stuff like that. This is the folder that supports this page. So home.page.analog, and that's the other thing that analog gives us is the single file component. So here, this is an Angular component. It has everything that you need for an Angular component, but it's just a template, and I'm importing the container, and that's all I need. And so that's kind of a big deal, right? The single file components, and I'm using them all throughout here. So like this article ID is also a single file component. There's a lot more script in here, you can see. But again, this is my template. And I can do host bindings in my template really easily and add classes to my template really easily. And so, this template, when it renders, automatically gets my grid and my overflow and all of that stuff from Tailwind. And then, then it's just pure HTML inside of my template tags here. And then, my styles also, I can set all of my styles up inside of here. And, then scripts. So like scripts are a little bit different. Some things to be aware of with your scripts are like I'm using a JSON pipe, right? And we could define metadata for the project. I'm not doing that anymore because they changed a lot of stuff, so you don't have to. But inside of here, I believe it's component metadata. Define metadata, right? And so inside of here, we can define some stuff like, if I wanted to change the selector, I could also add my imports array, right? And that's where my JSON pipe or stuff like that would go. And the inputs and outputs, they've changed so much of it that you don't really use define metadata anymore. Early on, I used it quite a bit. But instead, what you can do is you can use this special syntax that TypeScript has. And so what I'm saying is, hey, JSON pipe is going to be imported, but mark it as being one of the analog imports, which would then add it to that metadata array. And so this is like adding it to the imports of your standalone component. And again, ng optimized image, we're adding it to the imports here. The downside to this is notice that these both come from Angular Common. I can't put these two together in the same import. They have to be on their own, which, I would, well, that's a downside to it, but that's a quirk of the language and not analog. What else do we have? We've got imports, but there are other things that you can do besides imports. Analog includes something called exposes. So, like we can look at this one right here. So in the article container, we needed the environments to be able to read. Why did we need? No. But basically what this allows me to do is down here in the add environment, well, and I would need to do it in a particular way, right? I could do environment. Oh, the reason we had it here is I was printing stuff out, right? Um, so that's why I was doing it. So exposes allows you. So a lot of times when you do, like in Angular, a lot of times you will import a static array and then you'll add it to your component. Exposes is just kind of a shortcut for doing. Take this out. Not using it anymore. Other benefits to analog, markdown. So that's a big one, and that's something we're going to take a look at here shortly. So I just content route. Okay. And then there's this notion of API and server routes, and it allows both SSR and SSG, and it supports them really well. And you can use NX with it, which is a big selling point for me. And then it uses Astro, and we can use normal Angular components also. So like the API routes is something that we'll take a look at here shortly. Um, but basically you use the event handler, grab stuff. So I'm going to move my contentful stuff to API routes because that's going to help simplify some stuff. Spam this guy who's spamming. Oh, yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Obrador. Um, Obrador. Doesn't look like I've got mods right. All right, Obrador, you're a moderator. Thanks for catching that for me. Yeah, analog's a lot of fun. You should definitely check it out. There is some learning. Angular is on Vite only in the development environment. Like so, so like when you do an Angular an NG serve, that's running Vite. But um, the builder when you run like an ng build is that's ES build. So um, small, but yeah, you're absolutely. It does run Vite. The new version of Angular 18 comes out soon. Yeah, they definitely ditched with Webpack, file-based routing. Yeah, I love routing. Yeah. All right. So I do have a moderator in chat now. Thank you, Abradores, for helping me out. But yeah. Getting back to it. Let's get back to it. Let's fix up my article model. So this is going to be entry types dot. I think we did rich text, right? Take a look. Why their site doesn't respect what I said. I'm going to move this over to my other screen really quick. All right. Here we go. We've got our contentful stuff back up. And if we go take a look at the content model, the blog posts, you can see that content is long text. Patient. Nope, nope, nope. So I guess I didn't set it up as text. It is set up as just text. Text. Boom. Author. Do I need to do and field types dot array entry link? This is right. Authors. Publish date is also going to be entry field types dot date. No, it's not dot date. It is dot. Go take a look at contentful. Oh, it is a date. Date. Doesn't matter. And so that now my contentful article model. So now I should be able to go here. Instead of doing this, I should be able to just do full article model. Oh no. Now I really broke it. Oh, I don't even need the fields anymore. I can cut this all down to just full article model. So should fix up a lot of things. That is now a string. That's awesome. My author is a problem now. Oh, Vimic. I haven't seen Vimic in a long time. Um, Vimic. I used to attend here. Where Vimic is. Would be Vimic was. Yeah, I definitely check out his stuff too. Very, very good. Very good streamer. The contentful article models. I've got a problem because fields or and um this is type that it gives. I don't think it's a link. I do. First name is field type X. Now authors type never because it doesn't know what it is. We're slowly learning. And I do entry. Requires this. Could do an entry skeleton type. Uh, Entry field types. An entry link. And it needs an entry. Go object. There we go. There we go. That cleaned up that mess. That one worked. Took a little while to get there, but go back to our application. Boom. Make sure console and see. Yeah, my SSR is not turned on. So provide client hydration. I need to turn on the server. We'll get some APIs in place, but eventually this will all be moved over to the APIs of the server. There we go. Now we've got our articles. Oh, interesting. Oh, I was like, our images disappeared. Yeah, they disappeared because it's a responsive design. They're designed to disappear. When the size gets small enough, articles, images disappear. So there's that. Get this committed. That did take a little bit of time to figure out. and it has been a while. And and I've been busy. I have been so busy. Um, so June 1st, we're releasing um, we're releasing a new application. I think I could probably talk about it more after June 1st once it's out. Partners, we've announced the partner, but I just have to be really careful about what I say about work. I've signed a bunch of agreements about how I talk about what I do at work. So for those of you who don't know, I work for Bill. We do online bill pay and payment rails management like that. And I've been part of a really cool project that there's a lot of experimentation and R&D going on in what I'm doing right now, but it's a lot of work and the deadlines have been tight. And so I haven't had as much time to be on social media and stuff as I wanted because there's so much going on just at work. Me busy. We're basically building our own framework from the ground up. Um, well, when I say framework, we're using Angular as the framework that's serving everything. But when I say framework, we're building our own HTML components, building our own CSS, like styling ability. And this is so that our partners can easily style our stuff. Um, there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. A lot of stuff that I've done on stream is actually showing up in this project. A lot of what we've done on stream winds up um, being research for this project, which is kind of cool. So like dynamic components that we did a few years ago, constantly referring to that repo on my GitHub. We refer quite a bit to the Angular dynos, for quite a bit to a lot of other things. I'm on the other side. I'm very demotivated. I thought, oh man, dude, video games. So I have been I've been diagnosed with clinical depression, and sometimes when the depression's bad, video games keep me sane. So you're gonna have to tell me what you're playing on, brother. I am currently trying to finish Baldur's Gate 3. I started, and I don't even remember when I started. I haven't had a lot of time to play, but I started a long time ago, and I barely made it to act run that. So yeah, you'll have to let me know what you're playing on. Black Desert Online and Warframe. Played a lot. Oh, that's right. You were a high level Warframe player. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, if you guys don't know, Aurelius was really high level. Very, very impressive. Yeah, League of Legends and stuff like that. So, um, and yeah, difficulty finding jobs is a bit of an understatement. You get good at trading, awesome. Like, um, finding jobs is it's tough. Actually, let me back up. Um, if you're like a senior, like high level senior or staff level programmer, companies are looking to hire you. If you're mid to low level senior, it's really, really tough market. And if you're a junior, it's nearly impossible. Um, I've been trying to help a friend here in the local area just find a job. And there's another guy that I know who I've been trying to help also, both friends. And even at my company, like we're hiring right now, but we're only looking at like senior staff level right now for the roles that we're hiring. And that's what just makes it really, really hard. Yeah. And that and my experience is very US centric, right? Once you get outside of the US and you get into places like India and Italy and uh, um, the Middle East, just countries mainly like in and around the Mediterranean, finding jobs in those areas crazy because there's so much competition. Um, like been talking to friends who are hiring juniors, and like as soon as you post like a junior or a mid-level dev position, you're flooded with like thousands of resumes. Um, so the market is very, very flooded at the low end, but they're only hiring at the high end, right? And that's where things are really tough right now. And so I don't even have good advice. Like my advice works for like 10 or 15 years ago. I don't even know how to navigate the market. My best piece of advice right now um, is if you're if you're struggling to find a job, start creating content, start creating blog articles, do videos on TikTok, do shorts on YouTube, stream if you want, just any kind of content. And if you start creating content, reach out. I'm happy to promote you. But content creation is kind of like interviewing in public. Um, and what do I mean by that? When I walk into an interview, because I've been streaming now for 2 years, um, most of the people have found me on, you know, on Twitch or YouTube. They've watched my content and stuff like that. So they already know a lot more about what I do, um, because they can see my stuff and they can see how I think and they can see my code and right. Um, and so that's a huge benefit for me. So yeah, I live in the Netherlands and there are a lot of coding jobs, especially React. They hire even juniors, don't pay much. That's very true also. Yeah. Yeah, Obradores is definitely not a. We've had discussions, and Obradores is um, definitely high mid to senior level, um, right? I'd need to work with him to know where he is, but that's where I would place him for just like the questions stuff he talks about. So he definitely not a junior level dev. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing also that like one of the things that most companies struggle with is project management from the engineering side, right? And understanding how products get shipped, how products get put together, architecture, that. So yeah, there are no React jobs. Or jQuery, and those jobs are full. And that's DevOps. DevOps hurt the quite a bit. There were some good things that came out of DevOps. Like I do think that devs should understand how build pipelines work. I do think devs should understand how CDNs work. I think devs should understand how your code makes it to the internet. Um, it helps you write better code and it helps you to debug issues. You're right. But I we need like systems engineers, people who understand how to work on pipelines, because working on pipelines can be a full-time job, especially as your company grows. Um, and then full stack, technically I'm a full stack engineer. I actually, so when I started, I worked in DBase and CA Clipper. So if you guys haven't heard of those, you can think of like Pascal is kind of the language similarity there. And um, so it's a language written on top of a database, right? So DBase is a database engine. Actually, I don't even think DBase exists anymore. I can't remember what it changed to, but you still use like, I don't know if they use Clipper anymore, but the language is still very similar. It's been so long since I've worked in it. And then I started working in PHP, and then I got interested in the web, and I started building like my own LAMP servers, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Started learning the web there, and then I took a detour and spent years in .NET and C Sharp. I really fell in love with C Sharp when it first came out, um, uh, and so I've got a lot of experience in .NET and C Sharp. During that time, I was also working on like embedded Linux systems. So I had to learn this weird programming language that ran on an AS400. I was one of the few people at the company that knew how to do it. Our licensing agreement said that the only programming that could be done had to be done in the office on the AS400. I lived in Provo, Utah at the time, but the server was located in Lethbridge, Canada. Um, and so I would travel to Lethbridge to go work on the server. Eventually, we figured out how to tunnel that through proxies. I traveled a lot less, but yeah, I had to learn some embedded Unix, like right AS400. It was actual IBM Unix. Um, Learned a lot of Linux during that time, right? Building LAMP servers and things like that. Um, got really big into peer-to-peer stuff, right? So like I was there during like the Napster days and Metallica and you would never download a car type stuff. Well, of course I wouldn't download a car. That'd be stupid. Couldn't drive it. Um, but I don't know. I'm being facetious here. I actually think you should pay for your content. I understand that there are people, so I don't know. If you can afford to pay for it, pay for it. Not uh but anyway, the so I got big into peer-to-peer stuff. So I worked for an auto auction at the time, and I wrote a peer-to-peer network for the auto auction because I was working on an application in .NET, and I wish I had screenshots of it, but it was a Windows application, and the reason it was in Windows is that we were using these tough books that were like military grade tough books that had crazy wireless stuff and things like that in it. And basically, you would walk around a vehicle, and I had a tool where you could map out like vehicles, and where you would touch on the vehicle, then it would note damage, and then you could print out images of the damage and stuff like that. It was all a lot of fun to do, really, really cool. But the repair times were very inconsistent across all the auctions. And so they started standardizing on Mitchell manuals, but in the auto industry, if you guys don't know, Mitchell manuals are a way that you can look up any vehicle, any part, and say, oh, I need to do like a PDR, a paintless dent repair. Like there's a dent on it, we're gonna pop that out. Actually, that's $25. The time I was working, just $25 across the board, any PDR, and that was per panel, $25 per panel. So like an entire door was $25. Like your rear fender was $25. But say you needed to replace the brakes on, you go to the Mitchell manual, look up the um, look up the vehicle, look up the year and the make, and then look up the part, and then it would tell you, oh yeah, for the brakes, it's going to be $95 for the part. It's going to take you 2.5 hours. All this other, they could enter that information in, and then we had an AI that would go through and analyze stuff. And so when a dealer would bring a car, we would note all the stuff, and we would say, hey, based on how things sell, your vehicle is likely to make this much money. If you fix this damage, it's likely to make this more, right? So a lot of cool stuff like that. And then I got really into the web along with that job. So at that job, I was doing Angular J. Well, actually, a lot of stuff. I did jQuery, moved to prototype, Angular JS, Knockout. I also worked in a language. So JBase was, well, it was the database that I can't remember. The Proc was a programming language. JBase, it was a multivariate database, meaning that fields were entries. Like, so entry 1 was an entire record, and the fields within that record were denoted by an attribute mark or a sub-attribute, which was a really interesting way to do that. We moved over to inner systems cache, basically a red-black tree masquerading as a database, but it allowed you to do some cool stuff. And then from there, I just got more and more into Angular, and I've been more front end since. I haven't done a lot with like .NET backend. I do have knowledge of backend, and I watch people who do backend to keep to keep up with the latest trends. I won't say my skills are that great right now. Full stack, yeah. I don't believe in full stack. Everywhere I've gone that says that they're full stack talks about T-shaped, where they want broad knowledge base and deep. Like basically, even within full stack, you have people whose deep knowledge is back end and whose front end. They just want to be able to say you should be able to work stack meets. I'm a little bit cynical. Node.js and MongoDB, Laravel and PHP. That's the way to make money, I hear. Like PHP and Laravel will make you a good amount of money. I mean, only front end is bad. You need at least back end or front end, and maybe even structure. And I'll agree with that to an extent. Like people want to hire full stack. I think even as a front end developer, understanding how back end works, understanding how database queries work, understanding infrastructure, how that works, very very useful. Everywhere it's a generalist market. If you're front end, you're screwed, and that. So the reason for that, Obradores, is places, right? I could hire 2 devs, one front end and one back end, or I could hire one guy who pretends to be both, and try to get twice as much work out of them. And again, I'm being cynical today. That may not think I'm just being very, very cynical because of the way the market is. But one of the things that's there are two things. Was that what Prime? I think it was Primogen. Maybe I think it was. He was watching a video and reacting to it about US US market falling apart for programming jobs. Um, and one of the biggest things that's hurting us right now was a change made during the Trump era to how developers are counted against your expenses. And so in the past, say you're a startup, right? And say as that startup, you make 100K, right? We'll use nice round. But also have a developer working for you who makes 100K, right? So paid that developer 100K, you made nothing. And the way taxes worked before is you could write off that entire 100K in the year that it happened. And so you would owe zero taxes, right? Which winds up being really, really good for startups and where a lot of the job growth and market was growing. The change was now you have to take that developer's salary and stretch it out over 5 years. And so now, if that first year your company makes 100K and you paid that developer 100K, right? You still technically made nothing. But now, due to that law, you only get to write off 20K of that developer's salary this year, and then 20K the next, right? For the next 5 years, you write off 20K. Which means that even though you have no profit, you owe taxes on 80K in revenue. And that's killed the job market, right? How do startups start and hire developers if they make absolutely nothing and they still owe taxes on $80,000, right? In this example that we're talking about. And in other examples, it's probably worse. How do you do that? And the reality is you can't. And so it's squeezing out a lot of the lower end, right? If you're not a developer trying to start a company and you're not paying anybody, and you can afford to hoard, well, you can't even really afford to hoard that money, right? It just becomes way more difficult for the new startups, the small guys to start. But that write-off makes it way easier for the higher end of companies that have a ton of money, because amortizing that payment over 5 years, right? And then the next year they get to amortize, and the next year, right? It winds up being way better, right? Because big companies that can afford to hire developers and pay, give them raises and stuff, the amount that they're actually writing off winds up being better for the company in the long run, but it's very, very bad for the economy. It's actually shut down a lot of hiring. And that's why the job market sucks right now. And it's a horrible side effect to what's going on. But that's why a lot of companies aren't hiring, because they can't, right? They can't afford that hit in taxes that they're taking. And so, and this is very US centric, right? Centered. But a lot of the US would hire remote developers in other countries, and right there, it's having a rippling effect all over the place. And so they're working right now on changing that law, from what I understand. I mean, you guys should definitely go check it out on YouTube. Like that 100K example that I gave was totally stolen from that video. You should go watch that video. Very, very fascinating. There's another law that's causing issues too. And those two laws combined are what's creating this weird we need more developers, but we can't hire more developers, causing a lot of these layoffs. So a lot of these gaming companies that people are yelling at, like Microsoft for shutting down, and a lot of other things like that, it's due to these laws hitting where these game companies were on razor thin margins, but now with the new laws, they can't afford to keep them open. They're now losing money. And so there's just this huge effect across the entire industry because of one stupid tax law that made it easier for the ultra rich companies to succeed better. And it actually is better for them because it squeezes out a lot of their competition, right? In tech, the bar was always really, really low to get in. Um, and it allowed small companies to beat up on big companies who did stupid things. Well, now these small companies can't enter the market and beat up on the big companies because they can't afford to pay their taxes to get off the ground. So, I don't know. I was really, really frustrated to watch that one. Jobs, the perception of myself is just bad. I think that I should stop caring so much. I cared about my code, my job prospects. You should care. Um, but one thing that's really helped me, and like I said early on, I didn't know that I had clinical depression until about 3. And clinical depression shows up in weird and like procrastination, like self-destructive tendencies I would have where I stay up late. I would invest in things that were actively hurting me, relationships and my career and things. So, you know, from an outsider's perspective, if you can get access to any kind of counseling and see if you've got some depression or something like that, even ADHD, things like that can actually detrimental when unmanaged. And what do I mean by that? If you're undiagnosed and you don't know that you have some of these things, um, it's hard for you to figure out how to fix the problems that are going on. And that, like, your brain just works differently, right? Neurodivergent is what a lot of neurodivergent people, your brains just work different. And people can't understand that. And that's really, really frustrating to somebody who's neurodivergent, right? Because, like, you know, I've got some mild autistic tendencies. I've got depression. I've got some ADHD, right? Those things make my brain behave way differently than most other people, right? And it's difficult to talk to people about that because, like, if you tell somebody, I'm struggling with my depression, they're like, oh, yeah, just go exercise. Oh, yeah, just do something that makes you happy. Oh, go hang out with friends, right? Well, guess what? I'm also an introvert. So going and hanging out with friends actually takes energy away from me, right? And so people just don't understand that your brain is different. And so um, it's really difficult when you don't understand that that's what's going on in your brain. Um, it's easy to count on yourself. And I did that to myself a lot, and I still do. So, take care of yourself mentally because people don't understand. They can't understand, right? They don't understand that your brain is just different, and they can't. It just doesn't make sense. And yeah, the frustration is really a sign that there might be something else at work here. Yeah, I don't give up. 3 years of experience, you can't get an internship. I agree with that. I have very bad depression. Believe me, just unmotivated, not feel, and that's rough. Really sorry to hear. Yeah, schizophrenic web developer. That is so true. And then yeah, the fear, right? Like there's a whole bunch of things that work on developers. Like um, one of the things I had to learn early on was to stop looking at the whole project, right? Because ADHD tendencies tend to push me towards perfectionism. And if I couldn't perfect the whole product, oh no, what am I doing? I can't even get started, right? So I had to start focusing on small things. Just get something to the page. Okay, now just modify the page to do this, right? And that's been very successful for me. And it's helped me to manage those tendencies, but they still creep in and I still want to perfect things. Yeah, people don't understand unless they've experienced. And the fear of coding and procrastination, yeah, man, it's tough, right? Uh, I deal with that quite a bit. And yeah, best way that I've been able to explain like depression to friends or family members, like for me, on days when my depression is bad, one, I don't want to go to bed at night. I'd much rather stay up watching a video game, right? So that's first a sign. Two, in the mornings, I'm tired, right? But best way I can describe it is like, those weighted blankets. Daughters have some anxiety, and so we got them weighted, help them sleep better. Imagine taking those weighted blankets and just making them so heavy that everything was a struggle, right? And then imagine wearing that blanket all day. Everything is a struggle. It's just feels so heavy that I struggle. And that's the best way that I can describe depression around me. It's not that I'm sad, right? Most of the time I don't even appear sad. I'm not sad. I don't cry. It's just everything is a struggle. And I think that it's way more common in our industry than people realize. So I have a lot of respect for people out there who are working through their problems, don't show their problems. I'm not saying you should hide your problems. It's not healthy either. Find healthy outlets for your problems, right? Like my struggle with my jaw, and it's still not over. And it was an expensive mess. But a week ago, a week last Sunday was I in the no, it's 2 weeks ago. I was in the emergency room Sunday morning in a ton of pain, so much pain that I couldn't sleep. And my mouth was just aching and it was down into my neck, and I had a migraine and stuff. I'd been grinding my teeth. I wasn't handling my stress so much that I killed one of the roots in my tooth and it went necrotic. So I had an infection in my tooth that was spreading into the jaw. Um, and ugh, that is painful. Find those healthy outlets. Don't get into that where you're allowing stress to hurt your health. Like I'm still not done with it. I had to have the root canal, and the infection was so bad that the first round of the root canal went in and cleaned everything out, but the infection was still seeping, so they couldn't put the filling in there. They actually filled my tooth full of antibiotic, and I still have antibiotic in my jaw, and it's still making me sick, like sick to my struggling to sleep. But so I had to go back a week later, And things were good enough that they were able to, put the filling into my tooth and thought contact and infection's gone down. The X-rays show that the infection's gone. Still have, like I said, antibiotic in the cavity in my jaw from the infection, but it looks like the bone is starting to regrow, which is good. So yeah, but I still need to go, and now I've got to go get a crown on my tooth because the filling that the endodontist did for the root canal is only temporary. Now they've got to go cap it with a crown that's going to protect it. And so, that's a very real negative health consequence. Me not handling stress health properly. Take care of your mental. Living life today is hard, but I can't. There are a lot of difficult things. I'm going to agree with you on that. A lot of difficult. Um, and it just like inflation is kicking everybody's butt. Like I feel like my parents watching inflation, and it's been the last couple of years where it's just like blown me away. But to give you some context, when I was 14, I learned to drive. Started working on the farm that I grew up. I grew up on a potato farm. That's why I write software because farming is definitely not. I don't like early mornings. I don't, there's just a lot of farming that's not for me. Hard work. I have a lot of respect for farmers, ranchers, people who work their butts off to get food on the table. But at that time, I remember thinking that gas was super expensive because in the US it was like 80 cents per gallon. I think there's 2.2 liters per. So that's like 40, call it 40 cents American. I remember kind of freaking out. Gas had gone to like 95 cents per gallon, right? Which is like 45 cents per liter. Oh, sucks. This is so expensive. Like I would take my car. I drove a 1979 Ford LTD. Look it up if you haven't seen one. People collect. In fact, when we got rid of that LTD, some guy from Australia came and bought it from my parents for like $10,000 because he collected big giant boat of a car, had a giant V8 in it. My grandfather, he worked for Ford. He'd had this LTD since '79. That was the vehicle I was driving. I had a 15-gallon tank, so I could fill that tank. And I remember going to McDonald's and for like $2, you get a value, a Big Mac, a giant drink. That was supersized too, I think. Maybe it was 250. I don't remember. So Big Mac, fries, and a drink, like $2.50. Crazy things like that. Going to the movies, like $3.75. 4 years ago, McDonald's was still fairly reasonable, right? So like that same meal that was $2.50 when I was a kid was now like eight. You could still order off the dollar menu. You could still eat pretty well for like $3 or $4. Fast forward to today, that Big Mac meal is now like $16, right? So it's almost doubled in price over. the dollar menu no longer exists. It's now $1.99, so that's also doubled in price, right? And that's just fast food. But it gets worse, right? I watched I was watching a YouTube video the other night with Asmongold. Was reacting to this lady went to McDonald's, ordered a Big Mac, and the patty on her Big Mac was thinner than the one pickle that was. So Asmund went and he bought Big Macs from three different. No, he bought three Big Macs. Remember if they're from the same McDonald's or different. Pulled them out and compared them to the pickles. Every Big Mac except for one had one pickle on it. The pickle was thicker than the. And that's the other thing where we're getting hit, right? Is food quality is lower, portions are smaller. We're paying double the price that we were paying 4 years ago. Like anytime I go out, I'm like, this is disappointing. We eat out a lot, which is healthier for us by far. But still, you go to the grocery store. My family of four, we used to be able to get out of the grocery store for under $100 a week. Now that same stuff is costing us, right? And we're struggling because like wages are compressing, but costs are going up, and the amount that you're getting is so much smaller. Like, you open a bag of chips, and it used to be a joke that they were only half full, right? But now they're like a third full. Um, so yeah, people are struggling, um, and it's tough. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for you hanging in there. You guys are doing well. Italy, there haven't been raises in 20 years. The dating scene, they want millionaires. Look at exactly. They're obese and their health is falling apart because they're working themselves into the ground. They only buy fast food. They only buy things with a ton of. They only buy right, and that was very much me. Right, fast food was easier. You didn't have to think about it. With Uber, you could have it delivered to your house. Coca-Cola is making good. You get good change, yeah. Not going, and you know, things are beginning to look up though. There are some positive indicators. I think things are starting to get better. At least I hope they are. That's the one thing about me, right? I'll be serious about this stuff, but I like to be an optimist. Look for the and the indicators that I've seen say that things are starting to get better. And so optimistically, I'm hoping to believe, right? There are always people out there that are going to try and capitalize on everything sucks. Because if I convince you that there's a problem and I convince you that I've got a solution, then I can convince you to give me money. And right, that there's always somebody out there who's going. There will also be people out there that will, kind of bury their heads in the sand and say everything's good. You should probably believe the people that are somewhere between those two. The more conservative people, and I don't mean politically conservative, but I mean conservative in between those two extremes. Um, they're saying that things are starting to look only trash food. Fully agree. Same here in the Netherlands. Yep. Um, Well, and like I said, right, I'm drinking Dr. Pepper because over my years as a programmer, I've developed a crazy caffeine addiction. Like at one point in my life, I was drinking like Rockstar and Balls and Red Bull, like there's no tomorrow. My doctor was listening to my heart and he's like, dude, you've got to cut back. No more energy. You're going to have a heart attack. So careful about that. Putting another 60 billion to, um, yeah, politics are another messed up thing. I've learned to stay out of. And yes, America is rich. Like I lived in Guatemala for 2 years. And growing up, thought we were poor. We weren't poor compared to we were America poor, but we weren't um we weren't going and finding land and just building a house because we needed someplace for our kids to. And because we did that, we weren't having to deal with the government coming in with bulldozers and knocking over the entire little community that we built. And then once the bulldozers left, we go back in and yeah, yeah. There were times when we struggled to eat. When I was growing up, I often wore shoes that were falling apart and was very embarrassed by them. I remember that there was a kid who was a bully at school and noticed that tops and bottoms of my shoes were separating, so he came to class and just ripped my shoes apart. We didn't even have these, so I was duct taping my kids are laughing at. Like we were poor, but um, it was never as bad as we always had a roof over our head at least. Never homeless as a child. Always wore clothes that had holes in them that were hand me downs from neighbor. Yeah, not I don't know. I don't know how people in the situation that I was in as a kid are doing things right now. Anyway, let's get back to some programming. Um, yeah, oh, we didn't get a lot of the stuff done. I wanted to get into some testing today, but we worked through some issues that were really bothering me and finally figured out why the content stuff was in such a bad place. Why these things were called never. It's because I was using the wrong types. That's good to know. Um, we'll pick this up again tomorrow and finish this out. I want to, so for the image, I want to use the title to generate a hash we'll send that will give us the same image across. And then the next thing to do is just wire everything up. And so that's what we'll do tomorrow night. Thank you guys, and thank you for the discussion. Schizophrenic. It was good to have you here. Good to have you asking questions. I did notice that you said, "How long have I been in web development?" Since 2000. I started developing professionally in '93. Was my first programming job while I was still in high school. I graduated high school in 1995. Give you an idea of how old I am. But yeah, my first paying job was when I was in high school, writing software. I wrote some software for the city I grew up in that I actually think is still being used today. Grew up in a very tiny city, southeastern Idaho. Like 98 was when I officially, like 98 is when I started basically officially being employed full time. And then stopped going to school in 2000. So I did have some college, but I never finished my degree, which is something that I do regret. So yeah, that's how long I've been doing. Thank you guys for being here. We will be back tomorrow. We'll finish this up tomorrow. Really appreciate all the questions. You guys have a great week.